Hello, in this video we're going to look at the nitty-gritty of how you facilitate philosophy with a huge group such as an assembly. The first thing to think about is how is it best to spend the time? Now, in a classroom group, having a fair bit of time spent in whole group talk, moving the discussion on, hearing from this person, that person, maybe colliding their ideas together, that earns its keep because it helps the thinking to go deeper. But of course the trade-off is there's less time for individuals to talk. In a big group, the sort of economics of it are a bit different, really. There's an awful lot of people listening to just that one person. It might be harder for them to listen to them in that big echoey space. So you want to spend more time in paired talk and less time in whole group talk. Actually, that's probably a good message for talk in classroom-sized groups as well. I've tried to flip my thinking so that rather than seeing paired talk as feeding into the real McCoy, which is the whole class talk, I look at it the other way around. Energetic conversations in pairs are where the talking and thinking is really at, because that's when the most thinking is being done, the most talking and the most invested listening. And then the whole group stuff is what we use to gather in a few ideas from that. And then as soon as we've got something new and we can move things on again, we go back to the precious paired talk as quickly as we can. So spend more time in paired talk, less in whole group talk, because that way more people get to spend more time talking and listening in that easier environment of listening to just one person rather than being in this big echoey hall straining to hear someone. That moves us on to the second problem, amplification and volume. Something I'll often invite children to do is to stand up if they like to, so that they can use a big voice. So I'll say use big voices. Obviously you've got to keep everybody else quiet as well. The perfect thing for this is a catch box. It's like a throwable microphone you can get. It's a sort of square, squashy, foamy thing, which is a wireless microphone. Those are well worth the money. If you haven't got one of those, a wireless microphone, and then use that by going around as the facilitator and interviewing people like a vox pop. What happens then is that your teacher or head teacher power and the power of the technology are all invested in the child that you're interviewing. So it really raises their status, makes sure that all eyes are going to be on with them, because that's where things are at. So that's a great way of focusing the group on the speaker and giving them status. If that's not possible, you might find that you have to echo what people are saying. But if you do, your job is to amplify, not to interpret. Yeah, your job is to amplify, not to interpret. Don't paraphrase what they've said. If they've said a word in the wrong place, then you might tidy that up a little bit. Otherwise, it might seem as if you're kind of mocking their mistake. But generally try and faithfully replicate what they are saying, so you are just amplifying it to the group rather than paraphrasing and misinterpreting, which is what can happen if you try and interpret. Finally, another thing you can easily slip into doing in classroom situations, I often find myself sort of talking to one child, having a little bit of probing and prodding, asking them that second why, bringing their answer back to the question, all those good facilitation techniques. But because there are so many people there, the payoff is slightly different for that. It doesn't necessarily help everyone to have you locked into a conversation going deep with one particular child. So avoid those two-way conversations more than you would in a classroom setting where others can benefit more from that depth, and perhaps just hear from rather more people, even if it means that things skip around on the surface a little bit more than you'd ideally like. I hope you've enjoyed watching these videos about how to do philosophy assemblies. There are a couple of other examples of stimuli that you can use on this page. If you'd like to get Tom or I into your school to do a philosophy assembly, then get in touch. I'd also like to say thank you, shout out to Pete Worley from the Philosophy Foundation, particularly for some of the ideas in this last video here. They're things that I knew, but I didn't know that I knew them until I read them when he wrote them. So thank you, Pete.